Unreal Engine 5, just saying those three words to a PC gamer in 2026 gets you a groan. Stutter, shader compilation, frame drops, crazy CPU usage, and GPUs getting hammered just to maintain 60 FPS. I've tested a bunch of big releases this year on this exact laptop. Crimson Desert, RE9, James Bond First Light, Gears of War E-Day, Resynced are just a few of those, and most of them have made this laptop work pretty damn hard. Then I opened Mortal Shell 2. Okay, so let's just try. What? Really? It's giving me 72 FPS at 4K? This game I think released just a few days ago, and it's not some old game that's been patched consistently over the years. It's a brand new UE5 title running on an RTX 5060 laptop, an entry to mid-range GPU. And I'm playing at 4K, high settings, DLSS quality, ray tracing on, frame generation off, and we're getting around 70 frames per second. Well, I didn't expect that. So I want to find out whether Mortal Shell 2 is just an unusually light game or whether this is actually an example of what a properly optimized UE5 title can look like. And this is exactly the reason I'm making a video on this topic instead of just giving you another video with a benchmark chart. We've had a lot of Unreal Engine and other games released this year with great and incredible visuals, but performance comes with a pretty serious price. I've had games where 4K 60 was basically out of question, and there were some where there was a slight chance of achieving 4K 60, but not without dropping to aggressive upscaling. I've had shader stutters, I've had CPU temps climbing into the high 90s and staying there, and I've had to make multiple compromises just to get a consistent experience. So when a brand new UE5 title comes along and just works, I think that's worth looking at. So let's actually go through this properly. We are at 3840 by 2160 4K, that is high settings, DLSS quality, ray tracing enabled, frame generation completely disabled, and we're sitting anywhere around high 60s to 70 FPS. GPU utilization is around 90 to high 90s, so we're actually using the GPU properly. VRAM usage though is only 6 gigabytes, so it's very well optimized for that, and the 1% lows are sitting in the mid to high 50s. That's really important because I don't just want to see big numbers of average FPS. If the game stutters consistently underneath 70 FPS, then what's the point? But here it feels really comfortable, and this is DLSS quality at 4K. So yeah, we are not rendering every pixel at native 4K, but the output is still 4K, and so the image holds up really well. So this is where I think the results get really interesting, because if a game is going to run this well, I want to know what it's actually giving up visually, and honestly, not much. Does Mortal Shell 2 look exceptional? Nope. There are games released this year that are more technically impressive and look better. But does it look bad? Absolutely not. The environments have plenty of detail, the lighting looks good, the reflections are there, and the overall image at DLSS quality is surprisingly clean. And clean is very important because every ray traced game comes with denoising artifacts, and I have pointed those out in so many of my videos. This is the important thing. Here I couldn't find any such issues. It's clean. And it also doesn't look like a game which is maybe a generation old or a few years old, It still looks like a modern UE5 game, but the thing is, it doesn't destroy your GPU actually while doing that. Now the other thing I wanted to check was ray tracing. So this is RT on, and now I'll turn hardware ray tracing off, and well, I can barely tell the difference. The reflections still look very similar, the lighting doesn't suddenly change dramatically, and the performance is basically identical. So if you're running close to the limit, turn it off. Maybe you'll see some kind of difference in some other area. Because here at this section of the game, I don't see much of a performance difference. So whether you turn it on or off, it doesn't make any difference as per this scene. But I'm just saying that in other scenes, it might make a difference. And here's something I actually care about more than just another 5 to 10 FPS. The CPU was getting into the high 80s and occasionally into the 90s with boost enabled, the 14650HX. So I disabled boost and look at this, 68-69 degrees on CPU temps, and we are sitting at still around 60 FPS, and this is 4K, mind you. So we are giving up only 10 frames at 4K, but we are taking roughly around 20 degrees of the CPU. For a laptop, that's huge, and this is exactly the kind of thing I want to see. Not just, look, we got 70 FPS, but look, we can still get 60 FPS without having to run the laptop like a small jet engine. Now, obviously, most people buying an RTX 5060 laptop aren't going to be playing at 4K, okay? So let's drop it to 1440p. High settings, DLSS quality, and with boost disabled, we are still in the mid 60s to around 60 FPS. Turn boost back on and we are sitting in the 70s to 80s. But now, let's turn on frame generation. So with frame generation on, we get around 135 to 160 FPS. So there's no particular average. Most of the time it sits in the 140s. And in lighter areas, I've seen it touch 180s. Even when I'm fighting multiple enemies, I'm sitting in the mid 150s. Now obviously frame generation isn't the same thing as actually rendering 150 frames. But this is one of those rare situations where it actually feels like, you know how Nvidia wants you to feel about their frame generation tech with their marketing videos all the time? And in fact, this is actually better than that. It is just 2x. They usually show some crazy FPS numbers with 4x or 6x frame gen, right? And at this point, I just stopped and thought for a while. I opened the game and started benchmarking at 4K, and it works really well. Then I moved to 1440p just to see how it works, and turned on frame generation. It is superb. And I thought, isn't this a UE5 game that just released a couple of days ago? This is kind of getting ridiculous at this time. So this is the reason why I think Mortal Shell 2 is more interesting than just another benchmark video. I'm not saying UE5 is suddenly perfect. It isn't. And I'm definitely not saying every performance problem we've seen in UE5 games is a developer's fault either. But this game does prove something important. Well, what does it prove? It proves that UE5 doesn't automatically have to mean terrible performance. You can build a modern looking game on UE5, use modern lighting and reflections, give players ray tracing, and still target hardware that normal gamers actually want to use or actually own. And I know Mortal Shell 2 doesn't look as technically ambitious as some of the biggest releases this year. That's true. But that's also the point. Maybe this is the better trade-off. Instead of chasing every possible visual effect and then asking the player to throw a 5090 or some GPU to just get around 60 FPS, make the game good, make it run well, and let people actually play the damn thing, right? So this is the kind of testing I want to keep doing here, not just telling you the FPS numbers all the time. I want to see what hardware you actually need, what settings are worth using, what visual compromises you're making, and whether a new game is genuinely well optimized or not. So if that's useful to you, subscribe, because there are a lot more games coming this year and I'll be running all the major titles through this laptop. So Mortal Shell 2 4K DLSS quality, high settings, ray tracing on, around 70 FPS on the RTX 5060 laptop. At 1440p will get comfortably into high refresh rate territory with frame generation well beyond 120 FPS almost all the time. Of course, there are small stutters here and there, and visually this isn't the most technically impressive UE5 game I've tested, but the balance is excellent, and for me this is a new standard for what I expect from UE5 games, because they've shown me it can be done, and now I expect more developers to do it. And if you're running an RTX 5060 or 4060 or something similar performance class, and you're worried whether Mortal Shell 2 will work properly or not because it's UE5, well, don't be. It runs really well. That's the video for now, guys. I'll see you in the next one.